Hello, this is Mad Cat, the angry egalitarian that discusses this and that. And today is another edition of Mad Cat Smash Feminism, number 40. Sorry for the delay in time today, everyone. I sort of overslept. And remember, feminists, all this things that you say about toxic masculinity and teach boys not to rape. Wait until it happens to your son. Let's see how quickly you change the tune. All right, so let's go ahead and get started today. So this is kind of a depressing story. My son is 12. How can he be a rapist? Nightmare ordeal of a boy's sleepover sex. Basically, the youngster was thrown out of school and had his life ruined until his accuser admitted the accusation was false. Remember, this is a 12-year-old kid. A devastated mom was told how her 12-year-old son was accused of rape, arrested in his pajamas, and chucked in an adult police cell overnight. Only his accuser to admit 14 months later the sex was consensual. 14 months. The schoolboy had his life turned upside down and was thrown out of school with the false accusation hanging over his head after strict bail conditions meant he was prohibited from being around females aged under 16. And she starts, it felt very much like a case of guilty until proven innocent. My poor boy was treated like an adult on a brutal sex charge. He was terrified, and this will now affect him for the rest of his life. Yeah, I bet it does. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a MGTOW because of this. I mean, we know that this happens to adults, but a 12-year-old kid. So he basically lost his virginity to the accuser at a friend's sleepover in November 2014. Now, he was 12 at the time, and the girl was 13. Three days after they had sex, the police came knocking on the mother's door to basically arrest her son. So while she was confused, she took them to where her son was. He wasn't at home at time. And she's saying, the next thing I remember is us leaving the house and the policeman saying that he was arresting my 12-year-old baby on suspicion of rape. Tom, which is the name they're using for the article, was taken to a nearby police station where he was booked in and taken to a cell. I remember screaming. I was saying they couldn't take him to the cells because he was only a child. So he was actually put in a police cell. And as they said, they told me that they wouldn't be doing it if it was against the law. See, this will be discussed later that this actually isn't against the law. This is perfectly legal to put a 12-year-old kid in an adult prison cell. Tom was taken to the cells around 7:30 p.m. and stayed there until 3:30 a.m. Now, it's only about 6 hours, but still, that had to be really traumatizing. He was in the cell next door to adults. Grown men were brought in and put next to him. He was terrified. I was frightened to get him home. In the end, they agreed I could take him home as long as I had him back for an interview at 10 a.m. the next day. It was hours of torture, and they were treating him like he was guilty. Yeah, if you've ever seen any show, Law and Order show, especially SVU, it doesn't matter what the case is, men are automatically guilty. And the people at SVU will destroy whatever life they have to, even if it's later proved that the person they initially accused is innocent. They don't care. And you could say, well, that's just a fiction show. Well, fiction imitates real life. Art imitates life. Tom then made the mistake of lying to the police the next morning, saying he had not slept with the girl. Yeah, that was a serious mistake and only made him look more guilty, but he's a 12-year-old kid. Now, maybe his mother was covering for him. It's like, oh, no, my baby's innocent. But I kind of also agree with what she says here. I think he thought it would all go away, but he had little grasp of how serious it was. I mean, this was done in a panic. He was like, oh shit, there's something going on. Oh, no, I didn't sleep with her, I swear. Not really understanding that lying made him look guilty. He's 12 years old. When DNA came back, he apologized and told us that he was really scared. So he waited 14 months for a court case. Life had stopped for him. Bail conditions meant he pretty much was housebound, and it felt like everyone knew and everyone was talking. After being chucked out of school, we eventually got Tom in a special school for boys with behavioral difficulties, but it didn't work because he was not like those children and he was scared. He lost a year of his education. And when the time came, he went through a 4-day trial in a youth court. During the course of the proceedings, his accuser admitted to the judge the sex between the pair was consensual, and she had said it was rape so her boyfriend would not be angry that she had sex with someone else. Now, generally when these sort of things happen, like the woman we find out lied about the rape, I'm all for, like, let's throw her in a stockade and bury the key, you know. But it being a 13-year-old girl, my honest opinion is that she should be taken to a psychiatric hospital. She should get some serious counseling to prevent this kind of behavior from happening again. I mean, we're talking about a 13-year-old girl who, well, let's just say she's a slut. And while I'm not against girls being sluts, she lied. She lied about sex being rape and basically accosted a little boy that she probably forced herself onto just so she didn't have to face the music with her boyfriend. And you know what? Feminists call her a hero. I'm sure she got so much popularity because of it. But being on the stand and facing her accuser, she probably broke down and admitted that she lied about it. But the damage is done. And nothing can ever truly happen to her that can make up for the what happened to him. I mean, this is just awful. Tom decided to leave his mother's house following the ordeal and lived with his father in the north of the country. A police spokesman in the county where Tom was arrested explained certain procedures are followed when a child is arrested, but it's not uncommon for the child to be placed in a cell for a serious crime at the age of legal responsibility is 10. It is not unusual for us to not tell an adult prior to a child's arrest what the child is being arrested for. God, this is fucking scary. And feminists, I hope you're paying careful attention to this. You're going to have a son one day, if you don't already. And this is the kind of thing that can happen to them. It was consensual sex. Now, you might be able to say, well, a 13-year-old girl cannot have consensual sex. Well, then neither can a boy. And yet the boy would be considered a rapist. And you might one day have a son who dates a feminist, and you think, oh, how great that he's dating a feminist. My boy is truly special. Oh, wait, he's accused of rape. Well, I mean, my feminist training tells me that if a boy is accused of rape, he has to be a rapist. He just doesn't understand what he did wrong. But I raised my son to be a feminist. So where do you go from here? So no comments on this one. So let's go ahead and jump to the next article, which is just a lot of bullshit. What's the What's the relational toll of living in a sexist heterosexist context? Relationships, and especially romantic relationships, are central aspect of our social lives and primary sources of support. Okay, that's true. For sexual minorities, lesbians, bisexual, and queer. So forgive me, but isn't being queer gay? I always thought that was the same thing, and I'm not trying to be smart or cute here, but I always thought being queer was the same thing as being gay. Am I wrong about this? So for sexually minority women, relationship quality may be hindered by multiple oppressors they experience, such as sexist and heterosexist discrimination, as well as internalized sexism and heterosexism, i.e., incorporation of negative dominant societal attitudes and belief about women and sexual minority persons. So what they're saying here is that a lesbian girl might be affected by outside pressures in how she might treat other girls. I guess that would be the internalized sexism that all women claim to have, or all feminists claim to have. Feminist relational theory posits that experience of oppression and resulting feelings of marginalization and powerlessness may fuel adaptive relational schemas, such as silencing the self, which in turn harms the relationship quality. Silencing the self occurs when an individual prioritizes the needs of others over their own in order to avoid conflict and maintain relationships with others. What they're describing here is submissive personalities. And they're saying that the submissiveness seen in lesbian relationships is the fault of men. That's pretty much what they're saying. They're trying to say it in such a roundabout way that they make it almost look innocent. But this is an anti-men patriarchy article, and trying to say like, oh, well, these women are submissive because society tells them they are. And in any dynamic, there is a dominant personality and a submissive personality. And this just tends to be how social groups form. It's very unlikely that you would have two doms in a social group. Usually there's one dominant personality and a series of submissive personalities, although the submissiveness varies in has a range of variety. It's not the completely submissive will do anything that anyone says, and it is possible for, say, a beta male to challenge the alpha male, or the beta bitch to the alpha bitch. But there tends to be a dominant personality and some sort of submissive personality in any group dynamics. What this is saying is that when it comes to lesbians, we've got to throw out the book on our understanding of this. Oh, no. In lesbian relationships, the only reason why a woman is submissive or has any submissive-like qualities is because of the patriarchy. It's because men expect her to. Going on, women may be particularly susceptible to engaging in this restrictive way of relating because of their gender roles socialized as second-class citizens. So are you saying that both women in a lesbian relationship are submissive? They're quiet and don't say anything, and all they do is sleep with each other? Because I don't believe that for a moment. I've seen lesbians before. I've seen lesbians, interact with each other, and you can obviously tell which one's the dominant one and which one's the submissive one. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible to have two submissives in a relationship together. And this is true for heteronormative relationships, and even heteronormative relationships. And it's possible to have two dominants as well, but it's more common for a dominant and submissive to be together. And I've seen that dynamic before. Once upon a time, I supposedly dated a lesbian couple. I put that in quotes for lesbian because that's what they told everyone else. But they were actually poly, and I was a part of the relationship, even though they wouldn't tell anyone else. It was a secret relationship. And I can definitely tell you, being on the inside, and I mean that more in a figurative, not a literal sense, but yeah, it did happen too. There was definitely a dominant submissive personality going on. One was obviously the dominant, one was obviously the submissive. And this is what they preferred. The dominant was happy to have domination over the submissive, and the submissive was perfectly happy to be dominated by the dominant one. Now, you could say, oh, well, that was societal pressure, but it's like, that only works so far. You can only take that so far because it's this relationship that kind of demonstrates that it's perfectly okay for her to be submissive. And this is the one thing this article doesn't do, is it doesn't come back and say, oh, well, women are also responsible for the submissiveness that their partner has, and that their dominant partner should encourage their submissive partner to be more dominant. It doesn't ever do that. It just says everyone else is to blame. I mean, obviously, the girl's not responsible for her own personality, her own actions, and her own choices. And her lesbian partner is not responsible for any of those things either. And since we can't hold women accountable for their behavior and their actions, that means we have to blame everyone else. And that's what this report is saying. It's like, oh, well, they're told in society that they have to be submissive just to get along, so that's how they treat women. So basically, in the article published in the Journal of Sexual Orientation and Gender Diversity, which I tried to look this up, but once again, it costs money, and I'm not going to spend money on just the research alone. I'm not I don't have that kind of money. I would love to look at this experimentation, though, to see how they really did everything and try to understand, how they fucked it up. But they surveyed 540 sexual minority women who are currently in a romantic relationship. So, and I'm betting that they only focused on women in relationship with other women. Even if they were identified as bisexual, they were in relationships with other women, but it doesn't really say. Supporting feminist relationship models, well, there's your first problem. They found that more experience of sexist and heterosexual discrimination and higher levels of internalized sexism and heterosexual were each related to more self-silenced beliefs and behaviors, which in turn were related to lower relationship quality. So when I see that they measured internalized sexism and heterosexism, that means that they have a belief on what's considered sexism, and it doesn't matter what the individual person believes is sexism, that they're exhibiting sexist behaviors and don't even realize it. all make this fit together in their perfect little world. In other words, it appears that oppressive gender and sexual minority socialization manifests in romantic relationships by way of women thinking consciously or unconsciously that they need to behave in certain ways to keep their partners. Yeah, this has been true from the beginning of time. Men and women exhibit this behavior, especially if they're the submissive. But you know what? Dominant women have done this as well. Or, you know, basically by faking a pregnancy, getting a fake pregnancy test to get a guy to marry her, doing whatever she can to keep it. But the thing it doesn't mention is, what pressures does she have from her partner, her female partner, to be silent? It doesn't ever mention that. It just assumes that any internalized sexism she has to come from an outside source. Unhealthy, self-silencing approaches to the relationship, such as sacrificing one's own needs over their partner's and judging themselves via external standards, may contribute to less satisfaction with their relationships. So, silencing themselves and sacrificing their needs over the needs of their partners or their relationships, that's called love. When you're in a relationship with someone, you tend to try to sacrifice your needs for the good of the relationship. Now, the problem is in a dom submissive dynamic, the submissive sacrifices everything for their dominant, and their dominant usually does things for themselves more than they do for their submissive. But it tends to work better that way in a relationship. A lot of people stay together. Is it right? No, it really isn't. But it tends to be the norm. And it has nothing to do with societal pressures. Men will do this for women. Women will do this for men. Women will do this for women, and men will do it for men. But what you're doing is you're singling out just lesbian relationships and saying, this girl is silent. And it can't be her partner's fault because she's also a woman and she must have internalized misogyny. So it has to be that she's being hated by society and telling her she has to be silent in her own home. And if you said that in the workplace she's encouraged to be that way, you would have more of an argument here. But I'm sorry, you're talking about something that all humans do to one degree or another. Some of us have dominant personalities. Some of us have submissive personalities. And that's just a fact. You can't just, say that somehow lesbians are not human. Oh my God, that's what you're saying. You're saying that lesbians are not human by taking away their agency and saying that they're not responsible for their actions. And that if they're silent, that means that, someone else is controlling them, even though this is a normal aspect of humanity. You're saying that lesbians are not human. Wow. You're more sexist than what you accuse us of being. These findings have practical implications for therapists working with sexual minority female clients. You mean beyond just nothing is your fault? Everything's the fault of everyone else. You're a special snowflake. As a relational strategy, self silencing may be unintentionally result in not having one's needs and emotions heard and met, which may consequently generate inauthentic experiences and disconnect with one's self. Well, technically, that's true. If they're not happy in a relationship, then they need to be able to voice why they're not happy and what it is that they need. And this is generally good advice for everyone, not just lesbian women. Well, that's a misnomer. Lesbian are women. I mean, there are some guys who claim to be lesbians, but for women in lesbian relationships, this is true across the board for everyone. If you're not happy in your relationship, you need to address the person that you're with and let them know. But again, this is treating it that only lesbians have this problem. So thus, clinicians, I can't say that word, clinicians might challenge these ineffective relational schemas. Yeah, I doubt they'll do that. I doubt they'll say, well, you need to break up with the person because they treat you badly. They'll be like, oh, you're dating a woman? That must be so great. Oh, you're having a bad time? Yeah, it's those awful men in your life that have told you that this is bad. They're not going to do A. Foster an examination of way social culture factors and oppressive experiences work to maintain these beliefs. Yeah, I'll see that. They'll just basically say, "Oh, well, the reason why you think this is because some man told you that it was this way." Again, taking away her agency, her responsibility. Help clients learn to balance the needs of self and others. Well, that's generally a good thing across the board. Once again, while especially men towards women, that will sacrifice ourselves for anything that a woman wants because we're raised with the belief that if a woman wants us, that's a good thing. And the last thing we want is to be single. So we'll do whatever we can to keep a woman and sacrifice our own needs. Now, it does happen with women to men, women to women, and men to men, but I think it's more common with men to women that they'll do whatever a woman wants to keep her happy. And we need to teach these men that you cannot define your life by the standard of a woman. You need to define your life by your own standard. Work with clients on ways to authentically express their needs and emotions. Assertiveness skill training, for example. Again, across the board, this is what everyone needs. Promote skills to manage interpersonal conflicts in ways that help their client feel more authentic, more holistic, and less fragmented. Yeah, that's also a good thing across the board. Finally, these results support the importance of social justice and advocacy efforts aimed at eliminating sexism and heterosexism. No, 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 no. What this is doing is pushing sexism by telling lesbians, you're not responsible for your actions. No, it's men in your life who's responsible for these actions, or other women who've been influenced by men. All this does is create special snowflakes because you're singling lesbians out. You're not looking at, and you're not doing a proper analysis because you're not comparing them to anything else. You're not comparing them to like women in healthy relationships. You're not comparing them to men and seeing if men also exhibit this behavior. But the problem is that you're using feminist research. You're using, and you said it yourself. What was it? Supporting feminist relational models, which means that you started off with a bias, which you cannot do in a study. You started off with a bias and you tried to find evidence to support your conclusions. So let's go to our last article for the day. Domestic violence. Is violent porn or increased gender equality causing spousal abuse? I bet they say both. So, global representatives at the United Nations headquarters heard the rates of intimate partner violence against young Australian women are as high, if not higher, than they were 20 years ago. Now, I don't really know anything about Australia and domestic violence rates. I hear all sorts of things coming out like, oh, over 20 women have died so far this year from domestic violence. My Australian fans out there, if you could tell me, what's going on with the domestic violence in Australia, I would like to know more about that. But for now, I'll have to just give this some validity as whether it's true or not. A damning declaration considering the comprehensive push for gender equality and the empowerment of women in the past decades. Experts on the ground in Queensland feel that while domestic violence has been elevated to a public platform and millions of dollars being thrown at the problem, it is what's going on in private that hinders progress. So you're putting a lot of money into domestic violence and you're still being trumped by what goes on with it. Domestic violence tends to be something that goes on in private. So what's the fucking money for? You spent millions of dollars and was like, well, we can't exactly get inside someone's bedroom, but we're trying to stop domestic violence. What the fuck is the money for? Sounds like a mismanagement of money of just saying, hey, we're going to hire a bunch of people to talk about domestic violence and not actually do anything, because that's probably what you're doing. A new generation of young people are on a daily diet of violent porn and plugged in social media and music saturated with messages that it's okay to treat women badly. Oh my God, we're in the 1980s. Does that mean that Australia is currently experiencing life in the 1980s? I feel like we've time warped in the 80s and the 90s, and it's like, oh, it's the rock and roll music and it's the pornography on every street corner and it's influencing our children to be bad. I mean, honestly, this is what I'm hearing. We've gone back in time in America when this was like the biggest common complaint. I mean, it's still a complaint now, but not nearly as bad as it once was. Now, in America, it was shown that with the increase of pornography, violence went down. And I do think that the two are somewhat related to each other. But I mean, wow. I mean, my Australian fans out there, answer me. Are you going through our 1980s and 1990s right now in Australia? Is that what the culture is? Because let me warn you of a couple of things. Wow, it's going to be bad. If feminism is on the rise there, you know, you're going to have a lot of, Mom, I hurt feelings and patriarchy and blah, blah, blah. And it's nothing like today. This is like unfiltered. I mean, yes, it does get much, much worse, but it kind of becomes a bit more. How do I explain this? It really spiked in the early 90s and kind of mellowed out and then spiked a little bit again and then mellowed out, and it's progressively getting worse. But in the 90s, wham, feminism. And if that's what you're experiencing right now, oh my God, get the fuck out of Australia. Seriously. This is where more resources need to go. This is the perpetuating the. Oh, wait, hold on a moment. Hold on. I have something special for this.
This is where more resources need to go. This is where perpetuating the problem. This is what is perpetuating the problem. The easy access to violent online porn needs urgent action.
D. Magna, chief executive of the DV Connect, says, I don't know if that's actually a woman, but might as well give it a female voice. But they have more to say. Oh, engale us with what more you have to say on the subject. Sadly, one of the consequences of women gaining power and status in public life could be that some men feel they can only exercise their ongoing sense of privilege and power, or privilege of power, in the privacy of the home. Gender equality has challenged the status of certain men. So this is rather fascinating that it's saying that the reason why domestic violence happens, other than violent porn, is that men are losing control in society, so they have to beat their wives. So what happened when domestic violence happened when women didn't have equality? And I put that one in quotes. So was it because they were losing their power? Because, I mean, by feminist theory, they had power. So how do you explain that? So the next fun female for us to talk about today is the Australian longitudinal study of women's health, ALSWH. And she is Professor Geeta Mishra. That's an interesting name, I have to say.
Our research is invaluable to the global community. We have the personal information of 58,000 women over a lengthy period of their lives. It is vital to assess what the policies are working and what needs to be done.
So basically, they're just looking at women over a period of time. And they state that this basically started in 1995 with the Beijing Declaration of the Fourth World Conference on Women. they're saying here that 1/4 of women said they've experienced intimate partner violence, although they expect that estimation is like underreported, and that no progress has been made in over a 20-year period. So skipping past blah blah blah. The Queensland government has committed 66 million budget to tackling violence in this financial year. But I thought you were trumped by what happens in private. How is throwing more money at the problem going to solve anything? And in fact, I think it's a scam. I think women have no interest in solving this problem. They just want the money. I mean, think about it. $66 million to try to get, solve the problem of domestic violence. Well, if you solve the problem, you won't need money anymore, right? Now, according to the survey they presented, youth made up 25% of the 7,000 sexual assaults perpetrated in Australia in 2014, with 697 of these young offenders aged 10 to 14. So you're saying that a 10-year-old committed domestic violence on a female? How violent is Australia? I thought because they took away your guns, you were no longer violent people. I mean, a 10-year-old is being charged with domestic violence? That's like the 12-year-old that we just read today. That's fucking horrific. And of course, blaming hardcore pornography at the fingertips of children. And the police record a 30% jump, even though the state's population growth only increased by 5.26%. So basically, they're saying that more domestic violence is happening,
even though the population hasn't grown that much. But let's see what they have to say in response to this. Of course, the reason why the domestic violence rates in the studies are showing no decrease in 20 years could be related to the fact that there has been a surge in public awareness and the offer of more help so that more women are feeling comfortable to come forward. But domestic violence rates are still highly, highly underestimated. It is my work I come across so many women who come to me privately and are afraid to report that they are victims of violence. So many cases still remain hidden. But basically what they're saying here is that it's possible, it's kind of like the argument of saying like, well we're getting more and more people are getting cancer than they did like 30 years ago, or even 40 or 50 years ago. And some have deposited that probably the reason why the rates look that way is because we're able to, we have better methods of detecting cancer than we did back then. That is not necessarily that there's an increase in cancer, but rather we're just able to detect it a lot better. So we're getting, with more domestic violence happening, it may just be that it's being reported more, that there's more awareness, more people coming forward. But that doesn't seem to really be all that they're interested in. They're ready to blame hardcore pornography. Because honestly, this has been an argument that's been used since the 80s, when you could get porn at a video store. And it's like, oh, well, men now have access to porn and you can buy it on the streets. what was it, The West Wing? That's like, well, what do you think about children being able to get porn on the street for $5? And the president's like, well, I think they're paying too much for porn. I mean, that was a great line, and he was a conservative man, but, well, he was somewhere in between conservative and liberal, but it was, I would vote for Andrew, oh god, I forget his name. Anyways, I would support him for president, honestly. But we've seen this argument before, and it's like, Australia, here's what you do. You open up a history book of America and look at where this argument got people. And in fact, if anything, access to porn, made men less violent, made people less violent. We had a major surge in crime in 1993. Also what happened in 1993? The internet became available to the world. And slowly but surely, it dropped. And, I've done also similar research for the UK and their violent rates. And for the most part, the violent rates for females have dropped drastically, well, not drastically, continuously throughout the years. But for men, it has fluctuated up and down. So you can't blame this on porn. You can't say, well, men are losing their power, so they have to hit their wives. No, you're grasping at straws to try to get more money. This is nothing but a scam, and you fucking know it. So anyways, that's going to do it for me today. I'm going to kind of end this video short. But be sure to check out my other series, the Feminist Fumble series. I'm going to be doing that, well, somewhat every day. I get articles sent to my email every day, and some articles are not really eligible for my Smash series. I didn't do a whole lot of smashing today, but certainly there are articles that's just worth laughing at. So that's really what that is. Although I can still get very angry at them. I try not to, but I do. So anyways, check out my Patreon. If I make some money through that, hopefully I can improve the quality of these videos. And also pay for any my medical issues. I'm currently trying to see a doctor right now, but I'm not expecting much given my past experience. But I'm still trying, nonetheless, but I'd rather be able to pay for my own insurance because the doctors that are available on Medicaid, not that great. Which is probably why they're accepting Medicaid. So anyways, that's what my Patreon's going for. If you're not comfortable doing Patreon, consider buying my book. It's 14th centuries, it has vampires, it has the Templar Order. It's a series that I'm very dedicated to, and I'm like, yes, yeah, I know, another vampire series, but this is a story in me that needed to be written, and I think it's good. Of course, I'm biased, but I've had other people tell me that it's really good. Check it out. First book is free. Read it and decide if this is a story you want to continue reading, and consider buying the book. And do me a favor. Give me an honest review. Put it on Goodreads, Amazon, because this helps me out. Even if you think it was a piece of crap, give me 3 stars then, and just say, look, I like the guy who writes this, but not so much as writing. And there's also the voice equality stuff. Check out those petitions, put your name there, and let's make social media adhere to the First Amendment. Anyways, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and also share this out to as many people you know. And that's going to do it for me today. This is Mad Cat signing off.